Hi there, folks. This is Mark Smith, and you'll notice I'm not in my normal spot in front of my Chromecast screen that changes in the background. My daughter is hanging out here today, and I didn't want to disturb her comings and goings, so I'm up in the writing studio, what I jokingly call world headquarters, my cozy safe place. And I'm going to also, I have a bit of a cold today, so there might be some nose blowing. I don't think there'll be any coughing, but there might be some sniffles going on, so apologize ahead of time for that. I'm going to speak today about the topic growing strong in your broken places. We folks who've gone through narcissistic abuse, we have a lot of broken places, don't we? Years ago, when I experienced my first bout of narcissistic abuse and complex PTSD, a friend of mine gave me this picture. And you may not be able to read it. The glass on it makes it hard to read. This I keep in my bathroom, and I glance at it every morning. It says, "Perhaps strength doesn't reside in having never been broken, but in the courage required to grow strong in the broken places." And then right here, the flower has some repair work on it, some grafting of twine that has repaired a broken place, and yet the flower continues to flourish. So thank you, old friend, for that. I've been meaning to discuss that topic for years. As I'm standing there at the bathroom like, man, that would make a good video. The quote I looked up is attributed to a Karen McCandless, Karen C-A-R-I-N-E, McCandless, in the book The Wild Truth. There's a similar quote by a more known author, a fellow by the name of Ernest Hemingway, in one of his most famous book, A Farewell to Arms. And his quote that he wrote was, "The world breaks everyone, and afterwards some are strong in the broken places." I suspect that Karen McCandless drew upon Ernest Hemingway's quote. For her quote, she expanded it. I can't verify that. That's just a guess, but they're both killer quotes nonetheless. I'm wanting to explore the subject of suffering because nobody suffers the way we suffer. You know, we don't see it coming, and then we're assailed with an abandonment and an abuse that explodes into our physiological system and into our emotional system and just wreaks havoc and just destroys. I liken mine to a nuclear weapon, a nuclear bomb that went off on April 26, 2015. And nobody suffers like we do. Then many times we also face a community of angry, biased, shaming, hateful people who carry the negative energy of the enemy of our souls, what we call flying monkeys. So that's sort of how I'm feeling these days, is a nuclear bomb went off in April of 2015. I lived through it, but I still have radiation poisoning, and I still shuffle around a bit in physical pain, emotional pain. And then recently, I engaged the services of yet another harmful individual, and they turned loose an army of flying monkeys. There's a scene in a recent movie, The Hunger Games. I think it was the last Hunger Games, where one of the plagues was a scary monkey with really big teeth who would just come and attack and bite. And they weren't flying monkeys, but that's sort of how this energy feels. And you guys know what I'm talking about. Which is worse, the nuclear bomb or the horde of flying monkeys with really sharp teeth? It's all bad. So nobody needs help understanding healing, suffering the way we do. So as I'm working through learning and growing through my own suffering, I thought I'd share some tidbits along the way of what I'm learning. So how can we experience genuine, accurate, life-changing insight into exactly why are we suffering so much, and embrace our suffering and ultimately turn it around into a strength and a blessing and a springboard into a thriving lifestyle? Well, that starts with having a correct paradigm. I liken your worldview to your GPS system. I don't have a GPS system in my car, but of course I have one of these rascals. And if you turn on your Google Maps, that thing will tell you where to turn and point you where to turn and never get you lost. But if you have a wrong paradigm, it's like having a GPS system for California when you're living in Indiana. So let me share what I think is an incorrect paradigm that I'm afraid gets shared a lot in the circles of you blessed people watching these videos on narcissistic abuse. And I'm not saying everybody believes this. I'm not saying that other video makers believe this. This is my first nose blowing. Brace yourself. It's not going to be too loud. But I think it is something that a lot of people believe. And the paradigm is the world is filled with powerful, evil, genius narcissists who have the power to brainwash you. They have the power to destroy and victimize you if you just happen to have the bad luck of being in their path, even though you grew up in a healthy home. And that's a wrong paradigm on a lot of different counts, but it's a right paradigm on some counts. So let me share with you what I think is a more accurate GPS system, a more accurate paradigm. The world is filled with powerful, evil-doing narcissists. Many of them are very cunning. I don't think very many of them are genius, but many of them are very cunning. A lot of them aren't very bright at all. And they have the power to brainwash, to destroy, and not to victimized. They have the power to traumatize only emotionally unhealthy people. Those emotionally unhealthy people who attract them and who unconsciously conspire with the narcissists in order for our agenda of reenacting and healing our unresolved childhood wounds. I want to repeat that because I sort of mucked it up. I think a correct paradigm is the world is filled with powerful, cunning narcissists that have the power to brainwash, destroy, and traumatize emotionally vulnerable and unhealthy people who attract and unconsciously conspire with the narcissist in order to reenact and heal our unresolved childhood wounds. As adults, only we and we alone are responsible for the choices that ultimately result in the quality of our lives, the safety level of our lives, and the amount of happiness that we enjoy. And that's true, my friends. I'm not talking about childhood wounding. I'm talking about adult relationships, that you're responsible for your choices, and you don't get victimized, but you certainly get wickedly traumatized. So I'm going to draw on an author by the name of Mark Manson, and he's a famous blogger. I'm going to read from a blog from September 3rd of 2016, and 2012 I'm going to read from. And I got associated with this Mark Manson by reading his book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. And you think that doesn't sound like a very Zen or spiritual or healing therapeutic title, but don't let the title fool you. I want to recommend The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, because really what it's about is it is about self-differentiation. It is about setting healthy boundaries, taking responsibility for your life, and it's about detachment, not getting hooked. So this blog post is called The Prime Belief. So he's saying it's his prime belief and probably saying it should be your prime belief. And so it begins in the mid-19th century. A boy was born into a wealthy family. From the beginning, the boy suffered serious health issues, an eye problem that left him temporarily blinded as a child, a terrible stomach condition that forced him into a strict diet, and back pains that would plague him throughout his entire life. So this kid's off to a rough start. Despite his father's disapproval, he aspired to become a painter when he grew up. He practiced his craft for many, many years, and every attempt at that career proved to end in failure. Meanwhile, his brother went on to become a world-renowned novelist. As he entered adulthood, many of his health problems worsened. His relationship with his father fell apart, and the young man began to struggle with severe bouts of depression and serious thoughts of committing suicide. Desperate to fix his son's situation, the young man's father used his business contacts to get him admitted to Harvard Medical School. Fortunately, the young man was extremely intelligent. He could handle the coursework, but he never felt at home or at peace at Harvard. After touring a psychiatric facility one day, the young man mused in his diary that he felt he had more in common with the patients than he did with the doctors. I know what that feels like. Dissatisfied with his medical training, the young man looked for other opportunities within academia that may suit him better. He was desperate. He was willing to try anything, even something radical and completely different. He soon discovered an anthropological expedition to the Amazon rainforest. The young man signed on, excited to get away, to start over, to perhaps discover something new and interesting about the world and about himself. In those days, intercontinental travel was long, complicated, and quite dangerous. But the young man made it to the Amazon. There he promptly contacted smallpox and nearly died alone in the jungle. He was rushed back to civilization, and the expedition left him behind. Upon recovering from the smallpox, his back spasms returned worse than ever. He was emaciated from the disease, stuck in a foreign land alone, with no way to communicate, and he continued to exist in daily excruciating pain. So this fella, it's just going from bad to worse. The young man managed to return home to a very disappointed father, nearly 30 years old by then, still unemployed, a failure at everything he had ever attempted, with a body that betrayed him and wasn't likely to ever get better. Despite nearly every financial advantage and opportunity that he had been given in life, he had failed at everything. The only constants in his life seemed to be suffering and disappointment. The man fell into deep depression, and he planned to take his own life. First, though, Mark Manson wrote he had an idea, and in his book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, he mentioned, and I've got it on audio, so I don't know what writer. He drew some ideas from a philosopher that became his idea. He didn't come up with it on his own. He shifted his paradigm. He made an agreement with himself. In his diary, he wrote that he would try an experiment. He would spend one entire year believing that he was 100% responsible for everything that occurred in his life, no matter what. During this period, he would do everything in his power to change his circumstances, no matter what the outcome. If, he wrote, at the end of 1 year of taking responsibility for everything in his life and working to improve it, if nothing in his life had actually improved during that time, then it will be apparent that he was truly powerless in life to the circumstances around him, and then he would take his own life. So he gave it a year. This young man's name was William James, the father of American psychology, and one of the most influential philosophers of the past 100 years. Of course, he wasn't those things quite yet, but he would go on and become them in a large part due to this experiment. James would later refer to his experiment as his rebirth and would credit it to everything that he would later accomplish in life. There is a realization from which all potential personal growth emerges. This is the realization that you are responsible for everything you do in your life, no matter what the external circumstances. It's that simple choice to take responsibility for ourselves and for our values that allows us to feel in control of everything that happens to us and allows us to transform our negative experiences into empowering experiences. It's completely counterintuitive, the idea that being responsible for all of the horrible misfortunes that befall us could somehow liberate us from them, but it's true. Our responsibility for ourselves unleashes a deeper fulfillment by allowing us to construe whatever we confront into a value that fulfills our needs. I'm going to come back to Mark Manson's blog, but I just wanted to comment, with every person that I work with as a therapist and with every couple that I work with in marriage counseling, that's my goal, is to get both parties to quit blaming and pointing fingers at the other person and examining themselves and digging into their family of origin. A minister friend of mine once asked what the key to marriage counseling was, and I failed his little test. He was vetting me to see if maybe he should send his folks to me, and I failed because I didn't say, whack him in the head with the scripture. What I said was that every single couple I've ever worked with, and now I can say that for 30 years, there's always at least one person who feels victimized by the other. And I told him the key to marriage counseling is to enlighten the person, sometimes there's two, or persons who feel victimized by their partner that they never have been. That they have arranged their marriage and their life by their own choices. These days I say to a woman grousing about the behavior of her husband, I said, there's about 2 billion men on the planet. You don't have to be married to this fella. There's a lot of other fellas out there. That was your choice. The good news that you are in charge and responsible for your own life, that's not a shaming message meant to make you feel powerless. That's a powerful message because the only person you got any shot at changing is you. And if you change you change history. You change the trajectory of your life. And your life is going to be vastly different if you do the work on you. So whenever I feel victimized, I go hold a meeting with that guy that I see in the mirror by my little sign. I say, dude, how'd you let this happen to you? And what can you learn about it? So if you have this attitude of personal responsibility, you can move from victimhood and bitterness to a spirit of gratitude and empowerment. It will move you from feeling powerless to having a powerful, vulnerable, non-reactive voice that ultimately will lead you to safety and consistently getting your needs met. All right, I'm going back to Mark Manson's blog. Negative experiences are part of life. The question is not whether or not we have them, we all do, but what we do with them. Responsibility allows us to leverage our pain for empowerment and to transmute our suffering into strength and our losses into opportunity. I'm going to read that part again because it's killer. Self-responsibility, Mark Manson writes, allows us to leverage our pain and exchange it in for empowerment, to transmute our suffering into strength and our loss into opportunity. We don't always control what happens to us, he writes, but we always control A, how we interpret what happens to us, and B, how we respond to what happens to us. Therefore, whether we consciously recognize it or not, we are always responsible for our experiences. Dudes, that ain't no mental gymnastics. That's truth. That's some solid, life-changing truth. He writes again in a different blog at markmanson.net. It's a blog called The Feedback Loop from Hell. And he writes, suffering through our fears and our anxieties is what allows us to build courage and perseverance. I'm going to read that again. That's killer. Suffering through our fears and our anxieties is what allows us to build courage and perseverance. That's what I'm taking from my experiences. Is as a very small infant, I was traumatized and abandoned, and the world was a scary place. And I needed to work on that, so I reenacted it. And now the adult me is holding little Mark's hand, and we're facing off with a world that is sometimes scary, a world that is sometimes misunderstanding. And we're unflinchingly being courageous, and we're having a vulnerable, powerful voice that's being heard. Back to Mark Manson. Everything worthwhile in life is won through surmounting the associated negative experience that goes with it. Elizabeth Gilbert, the famous author who wrote the movie and the book Eat, Pray, Love, wrote a book on creativity and writing called Big Magic. And she says, as artists, and as people, you just sort of choose which kind of suffering you're going to have. She called it choosing which shit sandwich you eat. You can choose, you can be a surgeon and have the life of a surgeon, but you got, 10 years of medical school and long hours. That's the shit sandwich you got to eat. And she was talking with one of her fellow writers as a young, aspiring writer. She was a waitress, hadn't had anything published, but she worked on her craft every day, and she just was driven and hungry. And he was complaining about the lifestyle and about the lack of payoff. He had a lot of talent, but he wasn't willing to eat that particular shit sandwich of becoming a writer. And guess what? He didn't become a writer. And she jokingly thought back on that conversation, and she was gobbling up all her shit sandwiches by doing her preparation to become a writer. She saw his and said, hey, you can eat that? I'm hungry. I'm going to do what it takes to become a writer. Back to Mark Manson. Any attempt to escape the negative, to avoid it, or to quash it or silence it only backfires. The avoidance of suffering is a form of suffering in and of itself. That's where addictions come into play, because they're self-medicating to avoid our suffering. The avoidance of struggle is a struggle. The denial of failure is failure. Hiding what is shameful is in itself a form of shame. Pain is an inextricable thread in the fabric of our lives, and to tear it out is not only impossible, but it's destructive. Attempting to tear it out unravels everything else that we do. bring a little more light on the subject here. Where am I at here? The pain is an inexorable thread in the fabric of our lives. To tear it out is not only impossible, but it's destructive. Attempting to tear it out unravels everything else with it. To try to avoid pain is to care too much about the pain, what he calls giving too many fucks. In contrast, if you're able not to give a fuck about the pain, then you will be unstoppable, because you'll have the courage to face off with your pain. You won't self-medicate. You won't play the victim role. You'll learn your responsibility in the matter. You'll have fire in your belly. You'll go to war. And you will emerge victorious much more often than not. So I do want to recommend the book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, because it focuses on healthy detachment, individuation, and developing a self-knowledge and a serenity in your life. That's all I had to say on this subject of suffering. Embrace your suffering, my friends. It's not too big for you. We're warriors. We're bigger than the suffering. The storm whispered in the ear of the warrior, You are in danger. The storm is too big for you. And the warrior whispered back, I am the storm. And that's the kind of strength that you'll get from not giving a fuck about, the things you shouldn't give a fuck about, and just putting one foot in front of another and doing your own business. So join us on Tuesday nights at 8:30 to 10 Eastern Time p.m. for our live stream. We call it Church for the Narcissistically Abused. And you can ask us questions. You can ask questions ahead of time. You can message in. You can talk to each other. Subscribe to our YouTube channel if you haven't done so. Also, I have books on abandonment issues and affair recovery and shame recovery on our website, familytreecounseling.com. I'm wishing you sturdy lives that embrace pain, overcome pain, and build peace and safety. Thank you for watching. God bless.